Hi. Hi. Thanks. Okay. Okay, hello everyone and welcome to today's session. My name is Julianne and I'm one of the co-chairs for the First Nations stream. I would like to acknowledge the land on which we are meeting today, Gadigal land, and I acknowledge and pay respect to the elders past and present. I'd like to start this session by introducing Victor Steffensen. Victor is about to speak on an important aspect of country today. Victor, would you like to please introduce yourself? And please welcome Victor Stephenson from Fire Sticks Alliance.
Thanks for that, Julie. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this country and all the countrymen that are here today, and everyone else as well. It's a pleasure to come and speak at the Landcare conference. Very rarely I speak at conferences today, but I'm here anyway to do this one because it's important for partnerships and important for everyone to start working together. And I'd really like to thank Landcare as well for making those opportunities as well. So today I'm talking about soil. And soil, firstly, for those that don't know me, I'm also Takalak from up in far north Queensland, in the Gulf country. But talking about soil today to match the theme, and I was asked to talk about soil, which is country. And when we look at thousands of years of people, walking across country and walking across the land and all the practices around looking after the country, it all boils down to taking care of everything around. But when we talk about the soil, what's under our feet, really, really important. And when we see the trees from a distance, we also know what soil is there before we even go there. And every part of an aspect of soil has identity. And that identity in the soil is all the different trees that grow there and all the different ecosystems, whether it's rainforest or whether it's stringy bark country or bloodwood country. And also the soils mix up too to give us all the different type of trees. So when we get mixed tree country, we get stringy bark and gum go together, we get nice sort of sandiness and dark sand and a bit harder. And then when we move out and go into the bloodwood country, we get the lighter sandy soils. And all of that brings value and brings different plants and holds a whole community of different diversity of bush tucker and foods and medicines and all that sort of stuff. So really, really, really important that the soil is the identity of country. It's the skin, just like on our bodies. And when we upset that skin or if we damage our skin, we get a scar. And if we get a scar on our skin, and if it's a light scar, it'll heal and go away. But when it's a deep cut into our scars, we wear it for the rest of our lives. And so when we look at the way that we walk on soils and the way that we take care of our country, even through law and traditional ways of harvesting and digging yams and going into the soil for food sources, for root systems and tree roots and all that sort of stuff, it all boils down to covering the hole up again and making sure we don't leave it all open and putting that yam back and making sure that country is back to where it was, with the right level and right ground. And so all the practices took note and cared for that soil. And then when we look at the fire knowledge and how the burn country, and ensuring that we don't burn all the organic matter in the soil. And when we're burning for the grass and all the beautiful vegetation that belongs in those soils and the identity, which is the identity for that country. So when we see the trees, we know those trees bring a whole community. And a whole community of different bush foods and taka grasses, you name it. It all belongs in those areas, and they all follow the trees. And the soil is the most important thing, because otherwise nothing can come from that. And so when we see soils that are being sitting there with the wrong vegetations and not having their native grasses in a lot of them, or even in no-fire country, you know, like they don't have the grasses, some will have leaf litter. That's meant to be like that. But when we don't have the right vegetation, then the soil gets into trouble. When we burn in the wrong vegetation, we put the wrong heat into the soil. So the soil holds memory, like the whole landscape holds memory. And so when we look at the country and look at the soil, and it remembers the fires and how hot they are, and it has the DNA for all the seeds in that soil that's sitting there to have that right heat at the right time to bring up the right plants, so that there's plenty of food on the land, and also the diversity and the identity of all those different places are there and stay like that. But when we see country today and it's all one big mess, and when we see ecosystems that have the wrong vegetation, then we worry about our soils. And if we have leaf litter that sits on country for too long, and when it's supposed to be grass, then what we get is the change of composition of soils. So we see our sandy country and our lovely sand-rich country, which is one of the high diversity systems in sandy areas, that end up with white sand, lovely white sands that should be seen, have leaf litter for 40 years sitting on top of it when it's supposed to be grass or supposed to be the right vegetation. Then what we see is that sand go black colour, and we see it change its composition. And we start to see a layer on top of the sand that is not the right quality of soil and not the way that it's supposed to be. We're supposed to see that white sand straight from the top. Then you dig the leaf away, and then we've got all these problems. And now that allows seeds to grow that shouldn't be in that sand country. It allows plants that's supposed to be there not grow at all because of the change. The soil is identity. And if you chop all the trees down and take out all the trees and just leave bare ground, then the soil is the identity still. When we look at that soil, we know what trees are supposed to be there. And we remember what that country used to be and how we need to heal that country to bring back those right plants in those right places. Identity is so important, and the soils are so important. And so when we're looking at all that, like that country and that soil, and we see no trees there, and then we match that with language as well. And then we see the country soils, and then we see the language of the people that come from that place. And then they go, oh, this place used to be called such and such in their language. And that meant big forests or big scrub, or it meant whatever tree, or usually describing what that country really is. And that language goes back thousands of years. And when you see that soil and you see that language, and we look at the soil and we know, oh yeah, this is Gumtree country. And then we see this fellow say in his language, yeah, in our language, that's what it was. But it's nothing there. It's just a bare ground, and everything's been chain pulled or land cleared or fire burned through or whatever the destruction that's taken away those trees. Nothing will ever change the law of that country. And so when we go to the soils, that's our first starting point, and how we revive that country and how we understand this identity. And when we mix that language in alongside with that soil and country, and then we mix in the practice, language, practice, in terms of the knowledge and how we manage that sort of ecosystem to try and bring back that vegetation and that country's health. And then we see the response, what the land does and how it responds. It's that triangle again. And that triangle of that knowledge triangle of where you got those three come together, language, practice, and then responsive land, that helps us revive that identity. And that's why old knowledge is so important, and that old even language, and where language becomes really important, because language is not just important for us to talk, but it's also important to talk and how we heal land too. And sometimes when we go and do that work, a lot of people will see language words that they've never used because they don't do, because it's related to the country or the smoke, and they don't do that practice very much. And so languages and words come back into use for people when we start to apply it back onto country. But when we look at our soils, we've got soft feet. And soft feet have been roaming the country for so long. And all our animals, they're all soft feet, see? And that's what belongs in this country, soft. And when we walk through landscapes, we don't disturb the soil. The soil's got to be left alone. And so when we burn, we can't burn all the organic matter. We can't burn all the goodness in that soil, all the fungi that's sitting in there, the worms, all the different microorganisms, everything that's in that soil. We got to take care of that. And one little scratch in that soil, just like a little scratch in your skin, it'll stay there for a few days. If a cow walks on top of the soil, its hoof marks sitting in that dirt, and its trail of that cow trail going across the country, it'll stay there for years and years. And nothing will grow on that part. It'll be all compacted. And so all the oxygen and everything that's in the soils and all the moisture that's in the soils all depend on grass and the right vegetation on the top. And it also depends on our actions and how we treat that soil and impact that soil from the surface. And so when we're burning, that's why it's so important that we're burning and to look after the country in a way that the fire will go out at the next ecosystem and in that system. And so the fire breaks is the country, see? But what's happened now, that'll go and bulldoze everything now. Bulldoze fire trails, bulldoze fire breaks, no need. Root systems sticking in the air. Big scars in the landscape that sit there for years and years and years. And nothing will come back and grow. And so our soils need to be left alone. And if we're going to be doing any work in taking out weeds or taking out trees or that don't belong in certain systems and doing the work of taking out lantana or whatever, we don't want to get machinery to do it. We don't want bulldozer trucks on the soils. We don't want any type of heavy machinery disturbing that soil. Because the minute they do that, they're stuffing up all the opportunities for the right plants to come back and for that system to be perfect the way it should be. Beautiful surface. So important and strict part of law in terms of how food was harvested, like I said before, and how everything works. It's to leave that identity and that soil alone. And so when we look at how we protect that soil and through our land management and stuff, then it's going back to old values. And so when we're looking after our country, we've got to maintain old values. And those old values are getting our young people employed and getting thousands of jobs to walk through country again with the soft feet and to pull out them what's not there and take it out of there and not be lazy and say, well, we can do this with machinery and we can do that. We've got to maintain our old value if we're going to maintain country. And if we're going to get the best response out of country, then we've got to understand that country has a memory. And that memory is in the landscape. And what it remembers is people walking across country and applying that love and that time into the landscape. And not taking the shortcut by bringing in the machinery, making big noises and buggering up the soil qualities. And thinking, yeah, well, we got rid of all that, but look at all the tracks on the dirt. And nothing will grow back in them tracks for a long, long time. And so for all of that now, for that soil and for that country, and putting all that bulldozer stuff through. You walk through now and you see people piling up big mob of logs on the ground. and they put in, like, cutting down the trees, and they leave a big pile there. And you walk through country, you see a big log pile there, big log pile there. Then you see a big lump of dirt where a big machine pulls up into a big mound. You see all these scars in the landscape, and they're all contributing to losing the identity of that country and to allowing other plants to grow that don't come from those areas, turning it upside down and so forth. And when we see that, and the fire goes through and burns those wrong vegetations, then we get what we call a white ash. And that white ash is no good for our soil. And so when we're burning country, we're only burning the grass, that's all. And always have been. And always burning for the grass. Because the grass on the soil keep that moisture. And whenever we burn, we make sure that that regrowth is there straight away. Not burning and then there's 6 months of no grass and it's bare dirt for 9 months or whatever. Then the big rain come, push all that soil away and wash it into our river systems. But our gold is not gold. The gold belongs in the ground. The minerals belong in there. All those things are part of that filtration and all a part of our soils. Our gold is the soil. Our gold is the sand. And when we look at our river systems and our water and how the soils flow for our water qualities, sand is our gold for our water. And when we talk about all the old waterways and water holes, that used to be beautiful, clean water and sandy banks all through our river systems. They protected that sand by looking after all the country around to make sure that those soils stayed where they were, to make sure all the vegetation stayed where they were. And so by managing all these places, we've got to manage everything else to protect that. So our sand now is disappearing. Mud on top of it, all covering it up. Places where lagoons, where it's like beautiful crystal blue. And I talk to all the old people, they tell me all these places when they were young used to be sandy, you know. The birds, you couldn't see the sky. The birds were so thick and the sound was piercing your ears and you couldn't even see the sky because so many ducks and pelicans and geese and all kind of things flying around. Now, we go to some of them water holes, even as far as Cape York or any in the Gulf or anywhere around Australia, and you see mud. You see mud all over our sand. Therefore, now we've got no more reeds and we've got no more water plants that grow on that sand. Nothing, those plants won't come back in that sandy place that belong to that country. And what we get in return, no birds. The birds diminish. The geese sitting on the side of the lagoon with black feathers from the mud should be clean. You know? Just thinking in the way here. So sad, you know? And that's where the soil and the water come together. Where the soil and the fire come together. And the soil and that identity and vegetation all come together. And so we need to be taking care again. And we need to be keeping old values. And we need to make sure that we don't get organisations and people that go in there saying, oh, that's a good idea, but we'll get a bulldozer and a tractor and do it, and we'll do it this way, and take away all the jobs for the young ones, and take away all that intimacy and that connection with the land that builds on that knowledge and builds it further into the future and feeds into so much more benefits, into agriculture, into farming, you know, all that stuff, and into our waterways again and keeping them clean and bringing our birds back, because all them ducks, they need to eat the sand too. And geese, they got to have sand in their giblets so they can digest, so they eat a little bit too. No sand for them now. No more birds. No soil. No more grass. No more this, no more that. All starts with down there. The skin of Mother Nature. The skin. The soil. What's under our feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Are there any questions for Victor? Yes. Sorry. So you're taking off?
What is the attitude to all of the introduced species of plants, the lantana, the Parramatta grass, the rose grass? What's the First Nation attitude to all of this introduced material? Is it foreign or is it now part of the environment?
It is a foreign, because anything that comes from another place and you put into another place causes destruction, to its identity.
Right.
And when we look at our structure of our landscapes, there was a diverse, and the diversity was all there. And all of it depends on each other. And when you look at another plant that don't come from a certain system and it comes into that country, it doesn't have the same DNA as all the plants that belong in that soil place and into that ecosystem. Its DNA is different. And therefore, it reacts differently to fire, it reacts differently to how it grows, and its relationship with the community in them soils and with those trees.
Right, so it's out.
It's out. And then what happens is it starts to take over. So it says, like, I'm going to come take over your country. I'm going to kill all your little ones. I'm going to take away all your grass. I'm going to make sure I smother all your country. And I'm going to kill all your trees, and I'm going to fight them underneath and make them sick. And all these things happen, and anything that don't come from one place and go to another one is going to upset it. And something as cute as a little fairy possum, go to New Zealand, you turn into a monster.
Will the plants that are there, the environment that's there, tell you this does not belong?
Yes.
This does not belong.
Yes. And that's where the old knowledge is so important, and the bush food knowledge and the medicine knowledge and all the knowledge of bush foods and plants is crucial to identity. And so when I look at a tree, or one old fella might say to me, you got to go get this medicine, boy, or go get that for me, boy. First thing I look at is the trees. And I go, that's over there. And for thousands of years, that's the way it's been. It's like, yes, over there, everything in its home, in its identity, just like all clan groups and all different tribes. And that's what the structure of the landscape is. And that's how the people took the structure of all our kinship and tribes, and all that structure came from country. And so ecosystems are tribes. They all have their own language, all have their own people and their own way and their own unique values. But they're all trees, like they're all Aboriginal people, or they're all people. And that's why that identity is so important to how that is the baseline to everything. That's the baseline to tackling the weeds. It's the baseline to bringing the mass extinction to a close, to bringing the animals back. It's the baseline for even taking those values and how we improve our agriculture, how we improve all these things. But when a weed goes into that country, or a plant that don't belong there, or animal, or even a human, then thousands of years of evolution is disrupted. And humans are part of the evolution, see? You got to be silly if you don't think that after 40,000 years, people haven't helped evolve Mother Nature. And so all of that ecosystems and all those soil types depending on us now. They depend on us to go and fix it up. It's not going to get better if you leave it alone. And it's not going to get better like, all the wattle are there now. It used to be all red gum, and now there's all wattle there. That's good because they're going to make the soil better. And nah, that's not right. No. And when we look at that soil and we still see it's in good quality, we need to put the right applications on and the right DNA in terms of the heat. And so when you apply a fire in a place, we just talk about fire now, into a certain area that has all them weeds and has all them mob that don't belong in that country, then that's the spear to chase them away. Just like if I go to someone else's country and I'm on a mark over there, you get a spear for me, It's the same thing, see? And that's why, like, when you put that fire in, all the weeds will die. And when that fire goes in, all the grass burns. But you know what? The grass ignites, but the weed, it doesn't catch on fire. And that's because it's not ready to burn, and it won't burn. And that's that timing when we burn across that soil, we put the right heat in, And that's why it's crucial, because if that weed did catch on fire, then the heat would penetrate down. And so the DNA, when now grasses are ready to burn, and when they are ready to burn, all the introduced species won't burn. And that is the DNA for that. And that allows us to burn the right vegetation, put the right heat in the soils without it igniting and putting extra heat. Then we come back, that weed is dead. And because of the temperatures, it won't shoot back again in a lot of places. And that's why people get confused. Oh, we burn and the weeds come back again. Well, it's the wrong time or the wrong heat in the soils. It's really, really a really fine balance and lots of lots of knowledge involved in all of that. And thousands of years of understanding them soils and ecosystems around identity is crucial, because not just the weeds, but also the invasive plants that don't come from that country, like a wattle or some other plant that comes in, that'll also won't have the DNA to all the plants that belong in the bloodwood country, because he don't belong in that country. And so when we are applying that right management to country and we understand the identity of country, that is the answer. The answer to all our problems is identity. The answer to all our problems socially is identity. People and country are the same. Thank you. Yeah.
Victor, as we've buggered up a lot of these grasslands and we start to reintroduce your management process, are we going to see not only the uninvited, non-natural grasses for that land, are we going to see the grasses that were there come back?
Yes, and in a lot of cases it does. And it takes time, because when you do your first burns after like 40 years, and sometimes you don't need fire, there's different applications, you know? And there's different strategies around how we get that grasses and that thing back with that understanding the identity and understanding them soil types and country. But getting those grasses back and stuff like that, they do come back. The seed bank is in there. And that's why we got to hurry, because the seed bank can disappear. And if we're looking at country that had a lot of soil washout, then it becomes even harder again. And that's why it's so important that we got to move and move now. That's why we got our seeds still sitting in there and able to do that natural process of letting it come back. And after that first burn, it might be a little hotter than it should be because the leaf litter was all there. But then when we've done that burn, we haven't done it any old way. We've made sure there's moisture, or we use heavy rains and burn after heavy rain, or there's all different applications and adaptations to fire that all relies on identity. And to have that knowledge is crucial. And that's why the training is so important, and helping all the mob to rebuild their knowledge from their own country and from their own landscapes, and how we community mentorship each other and support each other to create that solid knowledge base. And all of the Western agencies and every single one, national park, you name it, doesn't matter, Landcare groups, everything, they all need to be on the same page. And we all need to be putting our shoulders behind the people on the ground and showing the results and sharing those results and celebrating them all together. Thank you. No more questions now. Yeah, thank you.